what ends up happening with me with podcasts is that just like that, we just start talking, right? And we end up just rambling on for 45 minutes. And then I go back to it later on and I go, what were we even talking about? Like, I don't even know what we were talking about. And so what I'm going to try to do is to have more of a question and answer situation. I'm going to try to be,
interviewer,
Bryant Gumbel or Barbara Walters, and let you be my guest.
They were boring. Don't do that.
Yeah, whatever. It's
Craig Melvin.
We used to put up with boring TV people.
Yeah.
They didn't used to have to be gorgeous and energetic and exciting. Walter Cronkite was a normal looking guy. Peter Jennings, all those guys were all normal dudes. And it's not how it works
women
anymore.
Didn't have that same glory.
Yeah.
We had to have the right hair.
Yeah.
And look the right way. And be the right size and all of that.
Well, but also, a lot of that playing field has been democratized by stuff like this, by podcasts and stuff, where you can just, if you have an opinion, you have a voice.
That's true. You just have to do your own fact checking.
Well, maybe. Some of them don't. That's the other thing, is that journalistic integrity is just gone, right?
Exactly.
And so all you have to do is say something, and it doesn't really matter whether it's true or not. You just say it, and it'll be fine. So, Shennice, thank you so much for being on the podcast. This is, I think, episode 6 or 7 that we've done in this series, and what we're going to try to do today is a little bit more kind of structured. So I'm going to ask you questions, and we're going to see where that goes.
Okay.
So hopefully, not quite so rambly as we've been in the past. And so now you and I have known each other for a while, for a long time.
Very long time.
But for the people that may not know you as well as I do, introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Well, since you've known me, I've had several iterations of business. But Shennice Cleckley, I am an AI innovator and a faith-based business coach. Personally, I have all these kind of kids, and I have a husband and a dog and grandchildren and all of those different things, and that's what I do. I'm an Aquarius, and...
An Aquarius, now what does that mean?
Nothing. I just remember that back in the day, you always say what your sign was.
What's interesting is I'm a Libra and my wife is a Libra, and it doesn't necessarily define our personalities as such, but it is descriptive of our personalities. So Libra needs balance, right? And so my wife and I both are very balanced people. So we don't fight much. We fight every once in a while, but not much. But we don't get a lot done. It's just everything's very balanced. There's not a whole lot of passion and screaming and throwing stuff, but we've been together almost 26 years, or we've been married almost 26 years, and it's all down to that balance.
Well, my husband's an Aquarius and I'm an Aquarius.
It's not supposed to work.
It's not supposed to work. I mean, like things, but I think because he's born in February and I'm born in January, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a fun-loving nurturer type of person who is an undercover nerd.
Nice. I love an undercover nerd. I have to be a upfront nerd. So undercover's better.
I'm
probably.
an undercover nerd.
Yeah, I like it. Because you look real cool. So yeah. So we have kind of a storytelling framework that we apply to clients. So when we bring clients in, we kind of lead them through something, and that usually gets a conversation started around the story. So the first question is, what attracted you to what you do? Why do what you're doing right now? So tell me what an faith-based AI influencer is.
Well, I didn't know it was a thing. I have always been, I shouldn't say always, but digital tools have always intrigued me. I remember back when Google was first coming out, and I really didn't like it. I really couldn't stand it. I liked Ask Jeeves. You remember Ask Jeeves? Yeah. Because you can ask a question and it works. And when Google first came out, you had to actually put in a formula of shoe plus dog equals now fine for me. And I didn't want to do all that. I'm not a coder. I don't like that. But yet I was working at a Fortune 100 company. I was working at Hewlett Packard as a business process analyst, working with computers, working on an internal system where I had to use those systems and skills in order to do my job to source products for engineers. And that's when I kind of realized that, hey, this tech thing is cool and I don't really have to be the person in the background. Fast forward to when I started business for myself, and I owned a bakery. So that's where we met and doing that. But I didn't run my bakery like a regular bakery. I ran it like a tech company, only because I met more people who were in the tech field, going to things like 1 Million Cups locally, looking at how businesses were growing. I ran it with R&D and products and those kind of things. So when I had this new iteration of life, and I asked God, I said, okay, Father, you have removed me from several things. What am I supposed to be doing? And he said, take what was old and make it new. And I said, okay. So I had to do a lot of pondering. And that new was looking at how AI is changing the world, but making sure that faith or purpose-driven entrepreneurs know how to use it ethically and know how to actually use it in their business in order to make sure that it helps them. So that is when that combination came together of taking what I used to do, what I loved, with my passion of Jesus and my passion of business, and talking about and doing all things faith, tech, and entrepreneurship.
That's awesome. So I've always recognized you to have a lot of energy. And
Yeah.
What keeps you going? What keeps you on this track and just kind of refining and sharpening the spear all the time?
Really is sounds hokey. It really is God. Because I want to quit so many times. I want to just stop doing stuff and just chill. Actually, I had a week like that 2 weeks ago. It's just, well, actually over the last couple of weeks, it was like, I am tired of reiterating, Jesus. You keep telling me this stuff and doing these things, but Father, why you keep doing this stuff? And it was like, I'm growing you, but I don't like growing. I want to be stagnant.
It's more comfort in it, right? It's comfortable.
Comfort and stagnation.
Yeah, that's right.
But that's really what keeps me going, and understanding that I'm doing what God tells me to do. If I did not have a higher power, then I really wouldn't know why I do stuff, because it's truly not for the money. Because starting over, or when you start over, you don't have a lot of money. When you're helping people for purpose-driven business, money is not the first thing that comes to mind. So it's not the money. I already have the family, but it's the sharing of the information, the why do I know all these things if I'm not going to give it to people, and modeling myself after that's what Jesus would do.
That's awesome. What do you want people to get out of working with you on this kind of journey? What do you want people to get out of it?
That their dreams are not far-fetched. That you don't have to run a rat race. There are tools to help you. And that, especially if you are a person of faith that works with me, if you just follow what God tells you, it's going to be all right. It's not going to be pretty all the time, but it's going to be all right. And that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell me functionally what that looks like. How do you do coaching on AI for small businesses? What does that look like?
Well, I have two different clients. My first client base is just a regular company, for instance, like your company. And they'll come to me and they have a list of problems that they have. So I will then look at that list of problems and figure out, do they really need a strategy or is it just a tool? And 9 times out of 10, they don't have a strategy. So I help them with the strategy. And then we integrate different AI tools to help them do it better. So the client bases, you usually have 1 to 10, the sweet spot, 1 to 10 employees. You've been doing a lot of repetition, a lot of things manually. You are not looking to hire anything or hire anybody more, but you need to streamline your processes. That's what the small business. With the tech company, it's how can I make sure that the AI products that I am using are better for everyone? Are they ethical? And so we offer feedback loop information. So you're building, you're in your beta stages. I get a group of diverse people together who I already have on my list. We test out your systems based on a rubric and let you know, are you being accessible and inclusive? And that's not inclusive because, that's a hot topic word. And that's not inclusive as, is your AI going to come out with black people, which a lot of times it doesn't. But it's also, are your colors the right colors for people who have vision problems? Do you have an option where it's closed captioning? Is it doing what you said it's going to do? And then we also go in and train product managers or engineers on how to have an inclusive design. So those are the 3 products I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. It looks like you got that. Part of the challenge with people is clearly defining those things.
Right.
Not just the problem.
Yes.
Right? Clearly defining the problem is one of the biggest challenges most people have. And, I wrestle with the idea of being the person with a hammer that thinks everything's a nail. Right. Because obviously in my business, I believe that marketing through video is the most powerful way of reaching people. Right. But clearly defining the problem we're helping people solve is a big challenge.
And on your business, marketing through videos helping people, what I would do is say marketing through video is helping you. Now let's find the AI tool that's going to help you do it quicker.
Right.
And once As Told By comes in and gives you a full-length video, what tools are you going to use to splice it down? What are you going to take that video in to give you the captions you need? How are you going to program those? And would that go with your campaign? And then I show them the tools that will work best for that.
I just found out about a month or so ago about Opus Clips.
Yes.
I went to a workshop, Kevin Schumacher's workshop. Kevin, shouting out Kevin in the podcast. And they talked about Opus Clips, and I was like blown apart with Opus Clips.
Opus Clip is great.
It's not perfect, but I can feed in a 1-hour podcast like this, and I can get 20 topics or 25 topics out of it. And even if the videos aren't finished,
right,
I get the topics, right, and I can go through and find and cut. And I think, man, it's just going to save us so much time.
It does. And I use Opus Clip is one of them. There's also one called Video. So that's another one that does it. I also use something called Cast Magic, who, while they don't split up the video, they do take your audio from your video and they put it into, these are 10 threads content that you can use. Clip it at this area. This is, if you want to use it for a workshop, these are the questions that you're going to use. So there are so many tools that are out there that are using AI, but based on what you want it to do, my company comes in and says, use this tool, which helps you better in order to do what you need to do.
Yeah, that's so awesome. We can talk more about tools later. I think that's really cool.
That's the nerd coming out.
Yeah. Oh man, listen. and I'll tell you what's funny about the nerd part is that I have such a hard time getting people to talk to me about the nerd stuff. Right. I just got new lights, and you can't see them in any of the. Well, you probably see them in the wide shot, but these tube lights are new, right? We got them for a video we're going to be making in a couple weeks where we needed some sort of like flashing dynamic lights to go through the shot. And so we're going to, create so we're going to use a smoke machine and all that stuff. But I got so excited about ordering these lights, and they came in, and all I wanted to do was just to go, do you guys know that they'll go like this thing to that thing? And
right.
Did you see the app? I can control all the lights individually, and I can do them all together, and I can have patterns. And nobody wants to talk to me about it.
No, because when they look at it, it's like, you do know it's just lights. I'm like, it's not just lights. Do you see the possibilities that you can do with the lights?
Listen,
I'm like that.
Even our staff, they're all excited, I guess, but they're also very busy finishing projects and getting things done on deadline. And they're like, that's great, boss, but I got work to do, And so,
but look at the lights.
I know, it's just cool. I was just like, y'all, they're like lightsabers too. They're kind of like you could take them around.
They're really cool.
So let's talk about the ethics of AI. I think that's an interesting topic because we run across it too, right? So if I feed bullet points into ChatGPT and it spits out a script for me, like I didn't write that script, but I don't know that the expectation that I write the scripts is always a thing. How do we understand the ethics of AI?
I think that we're looking at it because it's not a human. The ethics comes in. I am just for me, ethics is transparency. As long as you're transparent. But do we ask Stephen Colbert, did he write each one of his monologues? No. Do we ask any of the comedians that's out there, did you write all of your jokes? Do we look at an actress or an actor and say, hey, you didn't write that line, so it's not yours, even though they won an award for it? It's the same thing. AI is just making it where I don't have to hire a script writer to do my idea. The ethics comes in is if you act like it is your own. You have to say, no, I used the tool. Like, I call my tool Gemma. I love Gemma. It's Gemini from Google. But her name is Gemma for me.
Yeah.
Because Gemma and I talk to each other where she even knows my language. And I have this one chat. So you have several chats. So, okay, nerd alert. So when you're using ChatGPT, the mistake that many people make is they open a new chat every time they want to do a different thought.
Right.
But it's really not training it because you're starting something new and it doesn't look at the other chats. So I have this one chat that is, I use it only for my business. And me and Gemma, we talk all the time. And I start asking us questions like she's human. I say, Gemma, what do you think about such and such, such and such? And she'll answer me. She says, oh, that's good, Shennice. I think that you should do this and this because it's in your voice. And it goes back and forth. And she talks to me.
Yeah.
And so when I'm doing my own podcast, The Algorithm and Almighty, all right, y'all look at it. But anyway, when I do my own podcast, I say, hey, when I was talking to Gemma, I did such and such and such and such. And people know that it wasn't something that I did by myself. So ethics just means having transparency. When it comes to tools that you're using, don't use that data and sell it to somebody else unless I give you permission. Now, I know you're going to do something with it, but at least try to keep it private. I gave you permission to use it. I didn't give others permission to use it. And don't put it in the fine print. It's little things like that that make it ethical.
Well, that's where it gets tricky, too, is because Adobe just came out with a statement last week that they were going to add to their terms and conditions that whatever you put on Adobe Cloud is available for Adobe to use to create AI content, which is dicey, right?
It can be.
That gets dicey, and especially when you're creating visual content. The thing is, words are words, right?
Words are words.
There's only so many hundreds of thousands of words. The combination of those words isn't necessarily copyrightable in such a way, but images are
totally different concept.
Really different idea, right? So if you're using Midjourney or using any of these DALL-E or any of these visual generators, they're taking pieces from other things and they're reassembling it, and that's where it gets a little weird. And I've had a talk with my editors. I was like, okay, y'all, we're going to start to use Opus Clips to cut down these things because it takes y'all 10 hours to do it.
Right.
I can do it in Opus Clips in 10 or 12 minutes. That doesn't mean that I'm not using you for editing. That means that I'm going to use you for important stuff that isn't this dumb cutting down content stuff, right? And so I think we can utilize that. I think in my end of the business where, you know, we're not doing as much coaching as we are just like creating content. And I think that, you know, however we get to that content is important as long as we own the copyright, right?
Right.
And that's so important. Like,
but Adobe is not saying that you're not owning the copyright.
Oh yeah, no, I know.
But what they're doing is, how else can they train their AI of what's happening if they don't take pieces?
Sure.
Again, I look at things as iterations, and I think AI is just a same iteration.
Yeah.
Of something coming new. When we were doing cars have engines. Engines have horsepower. And once you have that horsepower, people who had buggies were mad that there was a car, but God took the horsepower of a buggy and put it inside the car.
Sure.
AI is doing the same thing. It's like sampling an old record and putting it in a new music. As long as you give the people their money for it.
But as long as you're also making a new, you know,
you're making it new.
You're of the generation where you and I can talk about Hammer.
Yes.
We can talk about Can't Touch This, right? And Can't Touch This was essentially, you know, just Super Freak, right?
Right.
With him rapping over Super Freak.
Exactly.
Right? And it started a conversation in 1990 or whenever it was it came out. It started a conversation about how much can we just sample a song without changing it a lot, right? He changed it enough that there was no lyrics in it, not many lyrics in it. But it was just the idea that Hammer's not really doing much to this. You know, if you listen to some of the early Beastie Boys or Run DMC or that stuff, where they're taking, you know, one song could have 30 samples in it, right? And they're really chopping it up. They're really making something new and interesting out of it. And you know, when Run DMC and Aerosmith did Walk This Way, it was in partnership. They said, okay, we're going to do this as partners, right? And this wasn't Rick James and MC Hammer doing Can't Touch This as a partnership. It was like, you know, Hammer just said, this is already a popular song. I'm going to add some rap to it, and then it's going to be a popular song again. I think that gets a little dicey, and it's not like, it's not exactly what's happening right now. But my question on AI is, it feels like the Wild West right now. It feels like we're all out in the wagons. We're all out there trying to figure out, you know, do we put a street up? Is there going to be a bank? Is there going to be a bar? Is there going to be, you know, a hotel? Like, we don't have any idea what's going to happen with this stuff, right? And I think any prediction anybody makes right now,
it's going to be wrong.
It's going to be, you know, probably less than what it ends up being, right?
Exactly.
And just in the couple of years that ChatGPT has been available, I mean, it's improved even in that little bit of time. I think it makes sense for us to use the tools now, you know, just to say whatever those tools are, right? If you were on AOL in 1994, right, you were that person trying to figure out the internet in 1994, right? And it, you know, if you look at where the internet is now in comparison, nobody thinks about speed anymore. Nobody thinks about accessibility. Nobody thinks about videos or, you know, what you're able to do.
Because it's commonplace. Everyone has it. You can get it anywhere.
Yeah.
I was listening to someone the other day who said, actually it's a group called Faith Tech, and they invented, they did coding for homeless people. And at first I was like, wait a minute, why did you do an app for those who were unhoused? And it was because in the area that they were, the unhoused actually had phones. And so they put an app on it. But normally you would not think of something like that, where even the unhoused has a phone to be able to stay connected to what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then back to your example of, okay, Hammer versus creating something new. Again, old school, I always think of analogies. McDonald's did not sue Burger King for coming out with a hamburger.
No, yeah, right. And
you know, but essentially it's the same bread and meat and add cheese for extra price. Well, it's the same thing.
So, as you know, from a creative standpoint, it's very interesting to see those things, right? How often do you see a street where you've got a Burger King, Wendy's, McDonald's all next to each other? They're all busy.
Yes.
Nobody's got a problem, right? It's nobody's suing each other for saying this is my block or this is whatever. And I think we end up with that in the creative end of things a lot, where it's like, this is my area, you know, don't come into my area. Or with the case of AI, you know, if I am, you know, let's say if I have to write a script for a client, and, you know, I'm going to sit down with my notebook and my pencil and paper, and I'm going to write a script for 45 minutes or an hour. Or I can drop bullet points in ChatGPT and get a framework for a script in 5 minutes.
And reframe
and then all I have to do is go and refine it. And I have to put, you know, the right human speech in there and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know that there's an ethical violation in that. Violation is I
think it's an ethical violation if you told someone, I can do this in 10 minutes and you pass it off on yourself.
Yeah.
It's really the transparency of it all.
Right.
And the territorial is always going to be there. It's always going to be a point of, since for some reason we keep on the music, how Erykah Badu says, you know, I'm an artist and I'm really sensitive about my ish. So, most creatives, because it is intellectual property. It comes from your mind.
Yeah.
You are going to be very territorial about what's happening. Coders are territorial about what they're doing.
Right.
So that goes into, do people like open source? And then you have open source that comes out is, I know the public is going to use it. I want the public to use it, and I want them to improve on it.
Yeah.
So it's really a scarcity versus abundance mindset
Right.
of, I am an abundance mindset.
Yeah.
I know what I do in coaching, what I do in AI is no different than what someone else could be doing as far as the business acumen. But what I bring in it is my own spin, the way that the Holy Spirit has given me insight into doing it and my anointing, and I want to make it fun for you.
Yeah.
So you can go to someone else. That's fine. I am not for everyone. But out of the 7 billion people in this world, there has got to be some people that will hear my voice.
Yeah.
And I think with creativity, it's the same way. How you have it seen, how you have it done. Even with, photographers. There's certain photographers, I'm like, yeah, I don't like the way they have their eye. And I'm going to go to a different photographer.
Yep.
It's the same way.
Well, and the thing is, they used to call that horses for courses, right? You have things that work for specific people,
Right?
And I think what ends up happening in coding is a similar business to music, really. Even,
it is,
right? They all know each other. They all kind of travel in the same circles. They all talk a language that nobody else really gets. Right. And
do they not? They talk a language. I'm like, what are you talking about?
And
this doesn't make sense.
It's all abbreviations, and so. The minute they start to drop the abbreviations in, I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
But business people do the same thing.
Oh, I know.
The jargon that goes in, and each company, you got to learn different jargon. When I worked with Google, and they would say something like, let's not pin that, is +1 to that. I was like, what the heck is a +1 to that? And that was basically saying, I agree, and let me clap. Clap to it. It's like +1. I was like, finally, after like 3 meetings, I said, what the heck is +1? That doesn't make sense. I think I agree with you.
Every industry has that kind of thing.
It does. It makes absolutely no sense.
It makes us feel like we're inclusive of ourselves, but we're excluding other people,
exactly.
Right? So by the same time, we're not doing that. And honestly, we've got terminology in the production end of things, right? Where I know the difference between a C-stand and a light stand, right? Mm-hmm. All that stuff, which makes, the terminology that we use all makes us feel better about ourselves and that we're doing the right thing, right? And so it's definitely interesting. I know you well enough to know your faith background. I'm interested in you being very upfront about your faith, and is that because you're trying to attract businesses that sort of operate that way, or tell me about that in a business context? I know it's personal, but I'm interested in a business context.
In the business context, because I am not trying to get people of faith. Yeah. The only way that I'm not okay. Let me reframe. I want people who are in faith. That's fine. My core audience is not necessarily faith entrepreneurs.
Right.
But I struggled with saying my faith because in business, you're not supposed to profess it.
Right.
You're supposed to keep it separately. Mm-hmm. It's almost the same. Well, it's not. It is the same as with ethical AI. Mm-hmm. I want you to know that many of the things that you're going to ask me, I didn't go to school for.
Right.
Jesus just popped it in my spirit.
Right. Right.
So I need you to understand that. And if you happen to be a person of the Christian faith, I want you to know that where I am coming from this is where my value system is.
Right.
So when I'm working in the tech world or I have a tech company, I don't necessarily bring in, hey, as I'm doing your feedback loop, the Lord told me to say such and such, such and such. I'll just write it, but not necessarily say it.
I see.
But if I'm working with a faith-based entrepreneur who wants me to use biblical principles to help them run their business and their values, then I know I can openly say it. And then as a regular person, I wear Jesus on my sleeve. So I'm like, hey, you get what you get.
So you use it as almost like a decision-making tool on your end.
Yes.
Without necessarily having to bring it into the thing unless it makes sense for the
Unless it makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I am doing now, my podcast episodes for this season is talking about the kingdom of heaven as though it is a tech company, and who would be the key players. And so this week's episode is talking about Jesus, who is the chief product officer, and why he's the chief product officer, and what skills can we get from him to learn that he's the chief product officer. He brings in empathy. He brings in understanding walking, knowing his customer, and how that can relate to business terms, and what values you want to have within your core values of your business. So in that instance, if you are a faith-based entrepreneur who doesn't necessarily wear the sleeve, you still can use it in the business setting. And you don't have to be afraid to use it. Now, I'll take anybody. I'm good. As long as you are an ethical person, I'm going to work with you. I really don't care. But I don't take all money. All money ain't good money.
Yeah, no, I get that. It is interesting as a marketing person, what ends up happening with us is that I get approached by all kinds of businesses, right? But also occasionally politicians. And most of the time I don't ask what their politics are. We work with sort of left-leaning organizations. We work with right-leaning organizations. I don't know that anybody's bad. Like, if I knew that they were bad people or they were doing bad things or they were taking advantage of people or hurting people, we would definitely not do it. But it's funny that a lot of times we get approached by politicians, and I forget to ask which side they're on before we get into it, and I don't really know. And so, I've done some documentary work with some Democratic organizations that are very, very much left-leaning with all of their stuff. I've done political spots for Republican candidates.
Right.
And, if you can tell a good story and you know your audience, right, knowing your audience is the most important piece of that. But if you can tell a good story, you know your audience, I don't know that there's any issue with, kind of riding both sides of the fence.
See, I've worked with atheists before.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to convince them to change.
Right.
I have an obligation to myself
Right.
to be true to who I am, but I also have an obligation to my client to make sure that I can do their goal. So if I have a client who has a goal and they're wanting to hoard money from people for something that they're really not producing a product for, and it becomes like a pyramid scheme, I can't do that. This is a scheme.
Yeah.
So I can't coach you on a scheme. But I can't do it if it's a pyramid scheme. If I know it's a scheme or something, like there's probably not many people I wouldn't work with, but I have had people who I've interviewed and I've looked and I do research before I say yes.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm like, something about this person is just really not right. So I don't really know if I can work with them.
Well, and also a unethical business typically won't, there's no good exit plan for an unethical business. They either burn up or they, something happens so that they don't continue going, the way they're going. And
right.
One of the things that I love about our business is that when we do work with the United Way or with the Salvation Army or with, Pathways to Healing or any of these nonprofits that are really doing amazing, work, like real work. They're getting out into the community and they're getting their hands dirty.
Right.
Gives us great stories to tell.
It does.
Right. We love being able to do that and connect to that. And I think, most of the companies we've worked with that are trying to sell products, but they're doing it in such a way that we still believe we can believe in the products as much as we believe in the nonprofits.
Right.
And that makes a huge difference, especially to my crew. I want them to really, we got to work with Camp Chemo 2 weeks ago, and
nice.
there is just nothing more sort of, I guess, emotionally charged than Camp Chemo for us, because you see how excited these kids are to get to go to camp. It's so much more than going to a Boy Scout camp or a church camp where these kids go every summer. That's no big deal. They're always playing. This is just another form of playing. The kids at Camp Chemo just really light up, and the counselors get emotionally involved, and like it's
purpose work.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It's so, and I don't know that it's driven by anything other than, for us, I don't know that it's driven by anything, but we just get to tell great stories, and we just love that. Okay, so tell me about the future. Where does Shennice go from here? And so that's one that I would really love to know, because do you bake it? Are you still bake at home and all that stuff?
Actually, I don't bake as much as I used to. I bake on holidays. I bake if somebody wants something. But after 15 years of baking professionally, I burnt out. Yeah. And so when God gave me the permission to stop, I did. I fought it at first because I was at the height of what I was doing. Yeah. But it was really the best decision that I could have made. My mental health was not very good at one point when I was baking, because I realized the gravity of, people may say it's just a cake, but it wasn't. It was their wedding cake. The one day of them doing something, I cannot mess it up. And so my anxiety would be very, very high, where I'm crying and everything else. Plus, as you can tell, I'm emotional about things. If I was mad, if I was sad, I would not bake for the day, because I didn't want that energy inside. I know it sounds woo-woo, but you can take, I wanted when people to cook to always taste love. You ever go to a restaurant, you be like, this is good, but something's missing? Yeah. It's because the cook had no doggone love. You got to have a little love. So the future of Shennice is, I have absolutely no idea. I really don't. I did not see myself going into this arena, but I do know within the next 3 years, I will have my own AI product that will be out. I would like to be seen as a thought leader and expert in the intersection of faith and technology. I would like to get out of coaching on the full one-on-one basis. I'm kind of out of it now, but people keep pulling me back. I'd rather my thought leadership to be a part of that, and to make Melanin Innovations, which is what I named my company, to be known for end-user support for tech companies and for small businesses.
And using the AI tools.
And using AI tools. I do teach with other digital tools as well, but definitely with AI tools, and being on the cutting edge and in the beginning of the industry, to always know what's coming around and be the industry leader. Eventually, I want to do actual white papers on, because that's the nerd part of me. I did a small one recently, had about 5,000 people respond on why aren't you using AI, and gave questions and answers. And it was very astounding that ethics came out to be one of the top 3. I don't know what to do because it's way too much stuff. And I am not sure how to use it. Those were the 3 things. Cost had nothing to do with it, which is kind of odd because it costs to use many of these tools. But there are a lot of free ones out there. So taking that and seeing the responses, and how can more companies use that to make better products. So that's the high level of where it's going to be as far as in business and what I want to do. Preferably be a empty nester, because we still got this 10-year-old at home. Oh, he's 11 now. I cannot wait to see what empty nesting feels like. So that will be great. The other 3 kids out the house, but got this one that's just hanging on.
We're getting the taste of it. My daughter's 14, so that means that she doesn't need parenting very much. She's getting to be a teenager, so she likes spending a lot of time in her room listening to music.
Yes.
So me and Mom get to just watch TV as we want to, and go for walks as we want to, and do other stuff. And she still likes doing stuff with us, which is good, but she doesn't need that constant that constant interaction
We're
like
not
they
there
used to.
yet. He's 11.
Yeah.
We're his best friends.
You're right there in the
We're
in the thick
right
of
there
it.
in the middle school, even leaving to come do the podcast today. And he was like, okay, where are you going? When we're going to get back? Are we going to have fun when we get back? I'm like, hey, summertime for you, it's fun. But for mom and dad who work from home, we work.
Yeah, and it's you dread the B word. You know what the B word is in the summertime?
What?
Bored.
He's only said it one time.
I know it's already June, right?
He's only said it one time.
So the thing is, if they're saying bored in June, my daughter said it already too, and I'm like, honey, you're 14. If you're bored, this is your problem. So you're gonna need to figure out what can you do in a day. You've got the world at your oyster. You've got no time constraints. You could learn German. You could read a novel. You could write a novel. I'm not here to entertain you at 14, and I apologize for that. But don't tell me you're bored.
See, Nerdy Mama.
Uh-huh.
Nerdy Mama has already devised a schedule. Plus, my child has ADHD, so I have to make sure that he stays on task on certain things. He has a schedule for Monday through Friday that at each hour there's something for him to choose to do.
Right.
I've also brought in toys or items for him to do.
Yep.
Every week he has at least one outside activity that we have put on the schedule for him to do. But he tells me he's bored, at like 11 o'clock at night. And I say, because it's time to sleep, my child. He hasn't said it in the daytime.
Yeah.
He only says it at night.
Well, my daughter takes horseback riding. Okay. Which sounds like a very expensive hobby, but she was doing dance up until a couple of years ago. It's very holy moly.
Especially if you're traveling.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And she got on the competition team or whatever.
Yeah.
So they had to have the matching jumpsuits, and they had to have a little bag for the baton, and they had to all the stuff. And so, horseback riding is actually saving us a good bit of money from dance,
Yes.
which is insane. But she's been helping with the summer camp, the horseback riding summer camp. So
nice.
she's been wrangling, as they call it, and so that's been good. But it's funny, once you get to the point that I think. You're looking at that empty nesting and you're thinking to yourself, okay, what's that going to be like? And I bet you're going to miss the noise. I bet you're going to miss the activity.
I will miss the noise. I know because I'm 50.
Yeah.
I had my first child at 15.
Okay.
So I've had a kid
You've been a parent for a long time.
Life. And when we thought we were going to have an empty nest, lo and behold,
There was another one.
we got pregnant again.
Yeah.
So with children who are out the house, grandkids, I know that I will miss the noise of somebody constantly doing something.
Yeah.
Yet I'm looking forward to navigating it because I've never had it. I've always had something. And LeBrian and I, my husband, we like to go places and do stuff. So I'm looking for the point of financially and where we don't have to raise anybody, where we can say, let's spend a month in Toronto and work in Toronto and then come back and do something. Or let's spend a week and get an Airbnb somewhere else and work just so we can have atmosphere and then come back. Not necessarily nomads, but the freedom to say, let's just up and go.
Yeah.
And to eat a dinner that I don't have to have chicken nuggets and fries.
Yeah. So, Shennice, last question.
Okay.
What is your favorite sitcom of all time?
Oh, my goodness.
Sitcom is the art that has kind of gone away in a lot of ways.
has.
So what is your favorite, especially if you're 50, tell me what your favorite sitcom is.
I don't know if I have one. I like sitcoms that have ensemble cast that are the main characters, such as Golden Girls, Girlfriends, Living Single, Cosby Show, where it's not just one character surrounded by everybody else.
Yeah.
So as long as the sitcom is 2 to 4 people, I'll watch it.
Okay.
So
Well, it's funny that as almost all of these sitcoms are now streaming,
Right.
So everything that you ever watched, right, down to I did a show at the Art Bar in May, and when the guy that opened the show for us is a weird type of like variety show. It's a weird, but he did the Love Boat theme with the Love Boat theme playing on the TV behind, and he sang the Love Boat theme. And I thought, oh man, the Love Boat. Like I used to watch the Love Boat with my parents,
Right.
Friday nights, and it was like I got to stay up a little later and I could watch the Love Boat, and it was an hour-long show. But I haven't seen the Love Boat as an adult.
No.
Right? And so I decided, okay, I'm going to see if the Love Boat is streaming, and of course it is. And it is ridiculous. I don't know if you've ever seen it as an adult.
I haven't. We didn't watch that much. We watched Family Matters or what's the one with
whatever the Thursday
Keatons.
night shows. What
would they do, baby, without us?
Yeah, Family Ties.
Family Ties.
Yeah.
We watched Family Ties and those kind of Facts of Life.
Yeah.
Those
Well,
things.
see, that would what I remember of it, and of course I was 9-10 years old, but like it would be those shows, right? Whatever the popular thing was, it was like Cheers and Family Ties and The Facts of Life and all those. And then it would be The Love Boat was an hour show, and Knight Rider was an hour show.
Oh, we used to love Knight Rider.
Fantasy Island was an hour show.
We watched that too.
Right. So, but The Love Boat is set on a cruise ship,
Right.
okay? But it has a laugh track.
It does.
So I don't understand how they're supposed to have that suspension of disbelief there. They're they're standing on the bridge, right? And you can see the Caribbean in the background or whatever it is, and there's a laugh track. So where is this audience supposed to be? I don't even understand where the audience is supposed to be located.
And see, now you're thinking too hard.
Maybe that's the nerd brain.
Too hard.
Yeah, that's the nerd brain coming out. Well, Shennice, thank you so much for doing this. This is
Thank
so
you
cool.
for
It was
having me.
good to talk to you for a little while, and sad that you don't make desserts anymore, but I understand. I understand how it works. I never had the patience to bake.
I
Because you have
love
to be so
baking.
specific with all of the ingredients and all that stuff.
You do, but if you just kind of do it and whatever comes out, then it's like gardening. It's just freeing. You just get to see what happens.
Well, and I'll tell you, my wife picked up gardening like hardcore during COVID, and what we realize is that everything is dirt. Everything is dirt, right? Anything can grow if you get the dirt right.
Right?
Right? And so you don't want to overplant
Nope.
in the right dirt, right? The wrong dirt, you have to overplant to get anything to live, but everything lives in the right dirt. And so right now, we've got a pile of zucchini like this tall on our counter.
Oh, wow.
Just because we just cannot stop the zucchini plant from spitting out zucchini. And it's all a matter of like numbers and just trying to figure out like, okay, if I have 3 zucchini plants, that's way too many.
Right.
If I have 1, that's too little. So I have to figure out how all that works. But anyway, well, thank you so much for doing this, and
problem.
I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Yes, thank you.